Let me extend to everybody a very warm welcome. Being on a second day that we are having this conference today, I'm sure that each one of you would have enjoyed yesterday and you would have had some great learnings from different education leaders that we had really got for each one, for you all. Whether this was the IAUP president who inaugurated the conference, was president of Citrus University, Dr. Fernando, who was there, or it was, for example, the Dr. Dinesh Singh, Dr. Furkan Khamar, or for that matter, let us say, Sister Shivani, who led the session in the area of mental health and resilience. Today is the day when we are really going to be concentrating on some of the other vital issues that to our mind are the challenges in higher education. And what a day to start other than to learn from the global leaders. I'm sure that each one of you over the last 2 years would have been witnessing that how, for example, some of these universities were making a difference in their entire approach to education. And they have been doing it very, very successfully. Or I would say relatively more successfully than others were doing it. It isn't in just merely online education or MOOCs, but in terms of student engagement, in terms of research, in terms of researching the new learning theories, and for that matter, how one can really integrate the learnings that they were having in this area. For example, students learn, how do students learn in a digital mode? And is it really different from a classroom kind of a mode? And if so, how do we really bring them in terms of our engagement today in an online education? Soon after, we are going to be going over to, after Dr. Jain's session, we will be going over to a session on research. And we have a very, very distinguished research scholars with us who would be talking to all of us. Professor N.V. Varghese, who is the Vice Chancellor of NIPA, National Institute of Education Planning and Administration, and Dr. Raj Srivastava, who is the former Dean of ISB, and also the Novartis Professor of Marketing Strategy and Innovation. This session will have also Professor Ashok Mishra, who's a Professor Emeritus at the Indian Institute of Science, and Dr. Rishikesh Krishnan, the Director of IIM Bangalore. This session is going to be followed by the skilled workforce for Industry 4.0. We're going to be having, apart from the academics, the more important thing is that Delhi State has established a Delhi Skills and Entrepreneurship University, and we're going to be having the Vice Chancellor of this university, the first Vice Chancellor to be addressing this conference, and followed by an industry session, which is going to be chaired by Vice Chairman and Managing Director of NIIT, Vijay Thadani, followed by, and it's going to be having the speakers from industry like Microsoft and Nico from Calcutta. And last is the session on the digital universities that we're going to be having. So ladies and gentlemen, we have today a very, very distinguished academic, one whom I have always admired and have always appreciated, looked at him as a great scholar, Dr. Dipak Jain. Dr. Dipak Jain is truly speaking a global academic Indian leader, one who has traversed in 2 different continents. And as he was saying, almost more than half of the population he has really addressed, or he has looked after the education of more than half of the world's population. Whether this was US, Thailand, China, India. So you name it. And he's truly speaking one who has traversed through the world and brings to us a phenomenal kind of an experience. And it's what a better person one could have got other than Dipak Jain today. He is truly speaking, as I said, a global leader and a thought leader, global academic and a thought leader. A distinguished marketing academic. He has held, as I said, positions like a Dean Kellogg Business School in Thailand at Saxena, and in China right now he is the president of the CEIBS, that is the China European International Business School. And now he is the vice chancellor of Geo University, which is all set to revolutionize the way we look at it from the perspective of higher education. So let's start with the session on with Dr. Dipak Jain. Dr. Jain, welcome to IMA Vice Chancellor's Council. It's a privilege to have you with us, and we all look forward to hearing from you and your views on the way you see education evolving particularly the higher education evolving in the world, whether this is from the point of view of the campus-based learning, it is the digital education, it is the liberal education that we talk about it, or it is the integrated education that we talk about it, or the research, for that matter, that we talk about. Over to you, Dr. Dipak Jain.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saxena. I have only one piece of advice for you. Never overspeak about a speaker. Keep the expectations low. Don't set the expectations high for the audience. And I tell you why I say that. When I was first announced as the Dean of the Kellogg Business School, that was first time in the history of America, a person of color was announced to be the Dean of a top school. It had never happened before. And I tell you, there were senior members of the alumni community who came to me and said, Dean Jain, I can easily see the downside. I don't know what the upside potential is there for the school, because before me, Don Jacobs was the dean of the school and he was the dean of 26 years. I told him, thank you for your great words, because the expectation was so low that even if I do marginal better, people would think, oh, he is better than what we expected. And you won't believe, in 2002, when Business Week rated us as the #1 business school in the world, with my picture on the cover page, that's an attribute to Indian higher education. और हमारे पास कुछ नहीं है, ना हमारा accent वैसा है, neither our color, but our training, our commitment. And one more thing, that is compassion and caring attitude, I believe has given me a lot of directional guidance in terms of moving ahead. So for the next 20 minutes or so, I would like to share with you few perspectives from the point of view of the global leader in terms of where we see the field of higher education going, given the kind of disruptions we have seen. And I would share the disruptions over the 2 decades, starting at the beginning of this century, and share with you a few lessons that I have learned. So when Dr. Saxena was introducing me, that I have been at heads at many universities or in many continents, something came to my mind. It was November 1962. Some of you may remember that China attacked India. And they came to India from the northeastern part. Today we call it Arunachal Pradesh. In those days, it used to be known as NEFA, Northeastern Frontier Agency. And when the Chinese army crossed the mountain part of northeastern and they came to the plain area, that first plain town was called Bhalukpong, which is next to a town called Tejpur, where I was born and raised. I did all my education in Tejpur, Assam. And I remember this day very well. The teacher came to the class and said, this is about 11 o'clock in the morning, that the Chinese army is less than 50 kilometers from the school. The government of India has asked us to vacate the town by 7 p.m. We are trying to reach your parents to take you back home. वो मेरा first year as a KG student or kindergarten class में थे, and we were more excited कि आज एक छुट्टी मिल गई है, we are getting a holiday, so we are going home. I remember my father came, we went home. That evening, we left Tejpur, and in those days, there was no bridge on river Brahmaputra, so we had to wait overnight. Next morning, we crossed the ferry, and it took us 7 days to come to Rohtak, where my grandparents are from. And I tell you, being a refugee at that time, running out of that place was a very different experience. I was 5 years old. I didn't even know what the implications are going to be. But let me tell you, November 1962, I was a refugee of the China War. 55 years later, to the same week, November 2017, that refugee was announced as the president of one of the top business schools in the world called China Europe International Business School. And that is the person today in front of you. A refugee of a war can become the president in the same country. I attribute this to two things. First, our education system, as I said. And second, most important thing that I felt in my life was Indian parents' commitment to education. I have seen my father, etc., never thinking of taking a vacation, but whatever savings they had, they like to give their children the best education. And so long that commitment on education and higher education is going to be there, I can tell you the best days of Indian higher education are ahead of us. I was telling Dr. Saxena, I was the first person of color to become the head of a top institution in US. And that was at the beginning of this century in 2001. And today, there was recently an article in Times of India where if you see Harvard Business School has an Indian dean, University of Chicago has an Indian dean. Before Shrikant, Nitin Noria was there and had, after Kellogg School of Northwestern, I got an offer to be the dean of MIT, Sloan School. I decided not to go there for some personal reasons. But I tell you that we have made an impact in the world when it comes to higher education. So where we see the field of higher education moving and what are the lessons that we can learn. So I want to start first with what is the future. My first day as the dean of Kellogg School was September 11th. I was welcoming the very first time a person of color welcoming the first new class of MBA students, 600 students in the hall. And I tell you, 15 minutes into my presentation, our director of corporate communications came to the podium and said, Dean Jain, there has been a terrorist attack on the US soil. You need to shut up before the cell phone starts ringing. Who would have ever anticipated an event like 9/11, a terrorist event, and that also in one of the most, I would say, a country of the type of US where somebody would dare to attack that country. मैं सोचा कि ये तो एक अच्छा भाग नहीं है कि पहला दिन as a dean and now you have this problem. Anyway, we ended the ceremony. I came back to my office. And as you know, whenever there is a global disruption, whether it is of what recently we saw of coronavirus, or there may be a terrorist event like 9/11, I was also personally present in Phuket when tsunami happened, a natural disaster. All these disruptions can cause significant impact on higher education because all these disruptions are going to affect the economy, and economy means the future leaders that we produce in universities. Immediately, I started getting calls from some students who had graduated that year from the MBA program. And they were saying, Dean Jain, we were supposed to join in late September our new career after the MBA at Kellogg. And now the companies are calling and saying that you have to wait for 6 months. In some cases, they said you wait for 1 year. And in some cases, they said you cannot join till 2003. This is 2001. I'm talking of September 11th period. What do you do? Your current students who had the jobs are being asked not to join. The students who would graduate next year are going to have a very tough time. So what do you do in a situation like this? I have a very simple rule in life, and I go back to my father when he was taking me to the KG classes. I asked in Hindi my father, Bauji, why do we have to go to school? Bola, beta, you go to school to learn the 3 R's. One is reading, writing, and arithmetic. The day after September 11th, I was remembering my father's words, and I thought that today is the day for another 3 R's. First is reflection. Second is renewal. And third is responsibility. I reflected on what we should do, and I thought of an idea that this is when things go bad. The best thing you do is to reconnect with the people whom you have taught over the years. Ma Saraswati ki deen hai, I had taught a lot at Kellogg, and even as the dean of the school, I all continued teaching. So I decided to write a letter to the people I have taught from 1987 to 2001, asking if they had any jobs in their company for about 60 plus students who had lost the job in spite of having it. And I said that if there is anything what to do, I don't mind asking this. I called some of the other leaders of other universities like Harvard, Stanford, MIT, and others. And they said, Dipak, why are you worried? This is not going to affect only you. 9/11 is going to affect all of us. मैं मन में सोचा, we all live under the same sky, but we have different horizons. Events can affect you equally, but how you react to that is going to be different. So I decided I will write a letter, and you won't believe there was a news item on CNN in US, Kellogg Dean begging for jobs. That was the title of the news. मैं मन में सोचा, I'm doing this for a good purpose. And purpose is in students who have decided to join to Kellogg, we have a moral responsibility to give them the best option once they graduate. You won't believe, in 2 weeks, I had 93 responses and I was looking for 60. The alumni came back to me and said, Dean Jain, you focused on other matters, leave the hiring to us and connect us with your placement director. My first lesson I learned that is, never hesitate to ask for help. And never help someone who is asking you for help. देखिए, help मांगने में कोई शर्म की बात नहीं है. And at that time, connect with your alumni community, because it is in their interest to help the school. If the school's reputation goes up, they would also be considered to be a better, because alumni are brand ambassadors, their brand value would also go up. और आप believe नहीं करेंगे, September 11th happened from October 2nd of 2001 till April 12th of 2002. I went and met all the recruiters who used to come to the campus, along with my placement director and my director of corporate relations, and met all the recruiters so that they continue to hire our people. And in 2002, when Business Week had a survey of business schools, we had 91% placement rate, and the cover sheet of Business Week had Dipak Jain with some of his students, and Kellogg School was rated as #1 business school in the world. Difficulties come in our way to make us better, not bitter. crisis only becomes an opportunity if you make the best use of that crisis. So ये जो global disruptions आ रहा है, whether COVID and others, these are moments of reflection. और reflect करने के बाद you have to renew your business model. Business as usual cannot be the model moving forward. And third is responsibility. But there is one major lesson I want to tell all the leaders attending my session today. You as vice chancellors or deans, you can delegate responsibilities. You make someone in charge of the MBA program. You make someone in charge of student affairs. You make someone in charge of placement. Responsibilities can be delegated, but not accountability. At the end, agar school acha nahi karta hai, that accountability lies with the person at the top, whether you are the dean of the school or the vice chancellor of a university. So we as vice chancellors need to make sure that we have a very good team to work with. You delegate the responsibility, but you are part of the system and you work with them in order to make sure that everything goes well. So 9/11 happened. January 20th, 2020, I was in China, and that was the day because 26th of January of 2020 was the beginning of the Chinese New Year, which is a very, very big event in China. And I was there addressing the thing. And when I came back to my hotel in Shanghai, I heard about this COVID problem. And that was the day when the first time the Chinese government officially made an announcement that in the city of Wuhan, we are having all these cases. I've gone through some very tough time in my life. In 2012, when I was diagnosed with brain tumor with cancer, had my brain surgery, it was really important for me to get out from this thing. I was able to get out. But then I connected with the institution digitally. So what did I learn from the China experience? China did a very good job in terms of first making sure that you control the problem, जिसको हम कहते हैं localized. So they sealed that area of Wuhan. Now people may always say whether all the information you get is correct or not. Let's not get into complaint mode. Let's see what they did right. And to me, what they did right was to contain the problem to this region rather than it getting spread all over the country. So when disruptions happen, see how you cannot change September 11th. You cannot change tsunami, the COVID thing. But what you can do is to have internal mechanisms to control it and then try to work with it. So what is the future of management education in particular, but higher education in general? One thing that this COVID experience has taught us is that the higher education in future has to be a form of some blended or hybrid learning. Digital learning is going to be an integral part of it, and we need to make the best use of it. It is not a substitute for classroom teaching, but it is definitely a great enabler to enrich students' experience. For example, not everyone can physically come to India to teach, but at Geo Institute, I have got commitment from one of the world's thought leaders. They can sit in their office or at home in US and address the students in Mumbai. Vivekanand used to say that if students cannot come to you, you need to go where the students are. So this digital learning to me has created that platform to make sure that everyone can be reached digitally. Or a very good friend of mine once said, Dipak, the best thing of digital teaching is every student get to sit in the front row. So digital mein to kya rows vagara kuch nahi hai, everyone attends. So everyone gets to sit in the front row. That means everyone has access to the best education that can be there. The other point that is happening is, which is very, very significant to me. See, when we were students, if you don't go to engineering or medicine, the areas you used to go were what we called arts, science or commerce. Sometimes people said the very brilliant student went for science, some students went for arts, and the third went for BCom degree with a degree in accounting and so on. This is to me compartmentalization. The future is what they use the term called liberal arts or liberal education, means don't have these silos. Just like digital revolution has made the world one place, I was telling Dr. Saxena that one thing I have learned recently is that geography has become history. There is no geographical boundaries anymore. Same thing in academia, we should not be creating these boundaries of art, science, or commerce. Interdisciplinary education means the student gets admitted to a university in a particular school, but let the student have the options to take classes outside their territory. Because you may join as a student who wanted to study history, but when you took some classes in philosophy or even you took some courses in business, you learned that these things can be integrated. So liberal arts education means teaching students the quality to connect the dots. Let them pick things that they are very passionate about. First is passion. Second is perseverance. You have to work towards it. And third, of course, is the purpose. So when I look at the model today, when we were students, we really went through the purpose. Today, the students are driven by purpose. But when we were growing up, the thing was get a degree and get a good job, whether you go to work for the government or you work for the banks or you take any other job. But since we grew up in tough conditions, making a good, successful journey was very important. We were more monetarily driven, but I tell you, the young generation is more driven by a purpose. They want to make a difference. If you look at Mark Zuckerberg, he wants to make a difference in the world. Bill Gates did the same thing. Jack Ma in China, people in India. Today, I became a part of Geo Institute because when Mr. Ambani approached me, he said, Dipak, we want to create the best university in India because not everyone may have the courage to go abroad. And I really believe that if you can put your best effort, creating an interdisciplinary approach at liberal arts means let the student flourish. So when I say that, yes, in our generation, our parents said, be successful, I tell my children to be more of a purpose-driven or public health. So when I was the dean of Kellogg School, the branding of the school was, by joining the Kellogg School, you start your journey from success to significance. Significance means making a difference in the lives of the people you come across. The third thing that is very important today is this whole concept of digital education, which I said classroom learning and etc. It's only going to add to the student experience. It's not a substitute, as I said. And also, today we can do a lot of integrated learning in the sense that how you combine different sources together. Compartmentalization, which we grew up, may be necessary at that time, but today we are interdisciplinary mode, integration mode, and we need to make sure that we give our students the best possible platform we can give. The role of a teacher is not to teach, but to create an interest in that topic. I grew up in a small town in Tejpur, Assam, and I tell you, we didn't have a university there. So we did a college degree, and then you file your registration with Guwahati University, and you appear as a student under this college. And in 1976, some people came home and said, Jain Sahab, aaj aapne Chicago Assam Tribune paper dekha. My father was born with one eye, and later on he lost the other eye. So for most of his life, he was totally blind. So उन्होंने कहा कि नहीं तुम पढ़ के बता दो क्या बोला आपका लड़का दीपक जैन फर्स्ट क्लास फर्स्ट गुवाहाटी यूनिवर्सिटी में आया है with a distinction in mathematics. मैंने mathematics honors पढ़ा था, statistics mathematics. तो and you should try to send your son to IITs for higher education and IIMs and ये सब जो है सब लोग कहते हैं ना मेरे फादर के पास रिसोर्सेस थे कुछ तो मैं शाम को जब स्कूल से घर आया तो मेरे फादर बोले बेटा आज कुछ लोग कह रहे थे कि तूने काफी अच्छा किया पढ़ाई में मेरी बस तेरे से एक ही रिक्वेस्ट है कि ये किताब जो आज तुझे मिला है मेक श्योर ये किताब बाकी इंडियन स्टूडेंट्स को भी मिले make sure that others also get a chance to excel in their life. तो हमारा तो यही काम है कि जब से whether 25 years I was at Kellogg School, 12 साल as a professor, 13 years in the Dean School, first time. Then I came to France and I was a Dean of INSEAD in Paris. जब बचपन में छोटे थे एक मूवी देखते थे बहुत फेमस मूवी थी called An Evening in Paris. कभी नहीं सोचा था उस समय कि एक ऐसा दिन आएगा फॉर मी एवरी इवनिंग वुड बी इन पेरिस जब मैं फ्रांस का डीन था देन आई गॉट टू बी आई गो वन डे हैड अ विजिट फ्रॉम द हर रॉयल हाइनेस द क्वीन ऑफ थाईलैंड केम टू शिकागो एंड शी आस्क्ड मी टू कम एंड सी हर एंड सेड डीन जैन आई हैव हर्ड अ लॉट अबाउट यू एंड आई वांट यू टू रन Chulalongkorn University in Thailand and now in China. All I attribute to our strong education system. What we need to do, just to conclude, is not to think that education is compartmentalized. Make it liberal in the sense, make students access to different courses. They have to major in the discipline they come, but give them exposure to others. You never know where their passion would combine with their personal interest and lead to a better performance. That's what I have seen. I didn't study business. I did my bachelor's in mathematics, honors, master in mathematical statistics, and PhD in applied mathematics. कभी marketing का सोचा नहीं था कि कभी somebody suggested me कि Deepak explore marketing. All this new data that is coming, you can combine your mathematical and statistical skills and solve marketing problems. And today that has become the field of data science या आप जो भी data analytics कहते हैं. So my point is disruptions lead to innovations. And I would just say, what is the future of education? I would use the word, what is the future diet, D-I-E-T of education. First, D stands for digital learning. We need to make sure we build good digital platforms for our students and reach people who cannot physically be present. I stands for innovative mindset. We need to think beyond the normal boundaries. Let's not be constrained by the regular boundaries. Ask the question, can we do this thing differently? So that is I. E stands for entrepreneurial spirit. Entrepreneurship doesn't mean starting a new business. Entrepreneurship means you're willing to take risk, you're willing to think different and act different. That's what Dipak Jain did when I was the Dean of Kellogg. Same thing at INSEAD when I came. I tried to create new programs between the different campuses. And T stands for team culture. Create a team of good people. As vice chancellors, our job is to create good teams of people who can be part of the shared vision you have for the institution. When I became the dean, I had two best deputy deans I can come across. And three of us, the two deputy deans and myself, we created what we call the office of the dean. And I made one thing, any two of the three can make a decision in the school such that if I am traveling and doing something, people have the ability to make a decision. So I said D for digital learning, I for innovative mindset, E for entrepreneurial spirit, and T for team culture. If we bring that part, the best future is ahead of us. My father, as I said, became blind at very early age. And my grandfather was a school teacher. He taught for 49 years at Jain High School in Rohtak. 24 साल as a teacher and 25 years as the headmaster. उन्होंने मेरा नाम दीपक रखा था. बोला बेटा, your father cannot see light. You need to give light to the world. And I can rest assure you, future is there. अगर एक आदमी हिंदी राष्ट्रभाषा विद्यालय में पढ़कर कभी केलॉग का डीन और वॉटर इंसियाड का डीन एंड देन चाइना एंड देन थाईलैंड बन सकता है. I think every Indian has the potential to do the best. They need good mentorship. And I'm sure that वो दिन दूर नहीं है जब सारे वर्ल्ड में बहुत सारे दीपक जगमगाएंगे और वो दीपक के नीचे होगा दिस दीपक बिलोंग्स टू इंडिया. ये हमारे भारतीय एजुकेशन का strength hai. We have lots of qualities inside us. We need the best environment and the support to make it happen. एक मेरी saying है, there is no challenge ahead of you is greater than the force behind you. Dipak Jain is always behind you. I look forward to doing anything for Dr. Saxena or for Indian education system. And I can rest assure you, the best thing we can do is stay united, and the higher education system, the best days of higher education system in India are ahead of us. And you all have a friend in Dipak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dipak Jain. And I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, we couldn't have had a better leader speaking to us this morning. Thank you so much, Dipak Jain, and let many, many Dipak Jains be there in this world itself.
100%.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.